70,000 people are here, and then Bob Dylan is the reason for it.
Inspired by their true story.
For anyone who's going to hold your attention on a stage, you have to kind of be a freak.
Are you a freak?
Hope so.
And starring Timothy Chalamet as Bob Dylan. He defied everyone.
Turn it down!
Play loud!
To change everything.
Make some noise, BD.
Timothy Chalamet, Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro. A complete unknown. Only in theaters Christmas Day. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across America from my flagship station, WSB in Atlanta, Georgia. The phone number is 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. There is breaking news. The Harris campaign. You know, I know for real that the Trump campaign has somebody who listens to the show and reports back. Well, I'm wondering if the Harris campaign does too, because they have just announced Bill Clinton will be going to Georgia and North Carolina to campaign for Kamala Harris. Finally, I mean, for that campaign, look, y'all, just as a student of politics, it is bizarre to me that the Obamas and the Clintons have not been barnstorming the country for Kamala Harris, who herself has not been barnstorming the country. This is not a campaign that looks like it's winning anything. It's kind of been remarkable. Well, Clinton is now. So there you have it. You Democrats can be happy. I don't know that it's going to help you, but nonetheless. All right. I gotta talk about a wild story. It's actually kind of bizarre to me that this has happened. So, to Nehisi Coates, Mr. Coates. I've just always said Tennessee, but it's not actually pronounced that way. I just have never taken the time to figure out how to accurately pronounce it. And I mean, by virtue of me being white, he thinks I'm a racist anyway. So why bother being charitable to the guy? I mean, he's really a terrible human being. It has nothing to do with the color of his skin, but his beliefs. This is the man who thought that the firefighters and the police officers who stormed into the World Trade Center on 9/11 to rescue people, many of them dying in the process, were actually bad people. And he felt nothing when they died. Gives you a level of his brokenness. Well, he's a hero on the left, as I mentioned the other day. He is who they pay indulgences to. White progressives embrace Coates to make themselves feel less bad about their country's racism. He had an interview on CBS this morning because he wrote a book. His latest book, he's on a book tour, and his latest book explicitly picks the side of Hamas against Israel. He has the man who looked at the firefighters and police officers dying on 9/11 and basically said good riddance, looks at Hamas going into Israel on October 7th and killing 1,200 people as no big deal. Jews got it coming. And he's written a book. His book does not talk about the Islamic Jihad. His book does not talk about Hamas. His book does not talk about Hezbollah. Every impediment in the Middle East is because of the Jews. The Jews are to blame. It's only the Jews. Everybody else is fine. It's all the Jews. The Jews, the Jews, the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. So Tony DeCopel on CBS News had an interview with Coates, and now we know that here's the problem. The other reporters at CBS News agreed to ask softball questions, and Gayle King submitted questions in advance to Coates that she wanted to ask him. And DeCopel, being a real reporter, didn't do that. He did not agree to ask specific questions, and he did not agree to refrain from asking specific questions. He did an interview. And in the course of his interview, Ducopel asked Coates how he could reconcile his views given what Hamas did on October 7th. And Coates does not like to be challenged. It's one of the things, back in the day, Ta-Nehisi Coates was edited in The Atlantic and elsewhere, but white editors decided that it would be racist of them to edit his voice. Because his voice is his voice is power. If you edit it, you are taking words away from him. You're taking power away from him. And his writing actually got worse when he wasn't edited, but it made him feel good, and he has gone largely unchallenged. Side note. When I was running RedState.com, it was for a long time owned by a group called Eagle Publishing, also on Regnery, the books, and also Human Events, the newspaper. And they asked me to start writing a column in Human Events. And I had an editor. And she would ruthlessly edit my stuff. And the second time she did it, she called me. And she said, I need to apologize. And I said, what for? She says, for editing your columns. I said, why are you apologizing for that? She says, well, the president of the company told me I was not allowed to edit your column. It needed to go as you wrote it, clean it up, and publish it. I said, no. She said, no, he said you didn't want to be edited. I said, I crave an editor. I am not the best. Like, I'm a good writer, but anybody who writes knows an editor makes your work even better. I wrote a piece one time for the Weekly Standard back when it was around, and that editor, Adam Rubenstein, who edited my piece, he went on to work for the New York Times until he quit over the anti-Semitism and stuff, really pushed out the door and documented it. He made my writing so much better than it was. So sharper, and he pushed me to refine things. I liked the challenge of it. It's very easy for me to just bang away my keyboard and hit send. So what I do, you see the typos. I try to proofread. I use Grammarly, although now that Apple's got Apple Intelligence, I might switch to that and not have to pay for Grammarly, which sometimes makes stupid suggestions. It made stupid suggestions to me today in what I wrote. But I don't mind having an editor. An editor makes your writing better. Ta-Nehisi Coates hated having an editor and felt like it was some sort of white man's oppression against him. It seems from the reporting, and they stopped editing him and his writing declined. And then he leaves to go to these Marvel comics for Black Panther, and they're a bunch of racialized stuff that nobody wanted. They didn't do well. But boy, Marvel, they patted themselves on the back for publishing his stuff. And then he disappeared for a little while. And now he's back. And the man who looked at the firefighters and police officers on 9/11 as the bad guys looks at the Jews as the bad guys. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Well, oddly enough, Tony Ducopel at CBS News calls him on it. And you know what happens? There's a complete meltdown. A complete meltdown. During an editorial meeting on Monday, CBS News executives said Ducopel had violated the network's editorial standards during the interview, where the host compared the book to extremist writings and challenged Coates for excluding the Israeli perspective in his book. I have to say, when I read the book, I imagine if you took your name out of it, took away the awards, the acclaim, took the cover off the book, publishing house goes away, the content of that section would not be out of place in the backpack of an extremist. And by the way, he's not wrong. The entire book was lionizing the fight against the Jews. So what happens, there's this huge internal meltdown. Ducopel stood by his questioning in the meeting. But the CBS News president and the head editor of CBS News forced him to go to a diversity meeting, and essentially it was a struggle session. Back in the 1950s, 60s, during the Maoist revolution in China, anyone who is viewed as not sympathetic to the aims of the Communist Party was dragged into the street, and everyone stood around them and yelled at them and berated them. And sometimes it got violent, and sometimes they were killed by students and others. And they were called struggle sessions, where everyone sat around and yelled at you for being this horrible person. And they put Tony Dokoupil at CBS News through a struggle session the other day. They vilified him to his face. They attacked his journalism. They attacked his ability to ask questions. They condemned him. Guess what? You know, I wondered where this would go because Sherry Redstone is the chairman of Paramount Global and majority owner of the company. She's also a huge supporter of Israel. She was asked about this now and says that Tony did a great job in the interview. I think he handled himself and showed the world and modeled what civil discourse is. He showed that there was accountability, that there's a system of checks and balances. And frankly, I was very proud of the work he did. Was very glad that he was the one who did the interview. And questioned the management of CBS News. I've been working with the CEOs. I've been working with the woman who does a lot of our diversity training, and I think we all agree that it was not handled correctly, and we all agree that something needs to be done. People need to understand the core issues and what we're talking about. We need to have better education about how to challenge people in a civil way, which I think Tony did. But actually, CBS president and CEO George Cheeks stood by the head of CBS News for the struggle session. Said they handled it the right way. That there will be no penalty to Gayle King for suggesting questions in advance, even though that's not journalism. And now it turns out CBS News is advising its employees to not say that Jerusalem is in Israel. By the way, Jerusalem is in Israel. They just don't want you to say it on the news. This is CBS News. Now, I mean, this goes back to CBS News was the home of Dan Rather, who lied about George W. Bush, to this day refuses to acknowledge or hold himself accountable for what he did. And now they're refusing to say that that Jerusalem is part of Israel. They're forcing a Jewish reporter into a struggle session for daring to ask challenging questions to a Hamasnik. CBS News has been captured by the terrorist sympathizers. CBS News has been captured by the terrorist sympathizers. And if you watch CBS News, you need to know this is the same network that did the debate for the vice presidents where they said they weren't going to fact check, and then they tried to fact check J.D. Vance, and when he pointed out they were wrong, they cut his microphone. It's them, the same people. This is what they're doing. Y'all, it's harder and harder for people on the right to get a fair hearing in the press. And what's remarkable is it's harder and harder for a Jewish reporter in the mainstream media to actually be able to do their job. The Hamasniks are taking over. The people who hate the Jews, the anti-Semites, are taking over. And what is so odd is, like, I mean, at CBS News, it's Sherry Redstone, who's Jewish, who is very pro-Israel, in charge of the company. But the young people who come into the news these days, they don't want to be journalists. They want to be activists. And many of them are deeply anti-Semitic. The Hamasniks are taking over CBS News. They've taken over MSNBC these days. At MSNBC, it is all about solidarity with Hamas. At the Washington Post is practically written by the Hamas these days. In fact, I tweeted the other day when Hassan Nasrallah died, I tweeted out my thoughts and prayers for the Washington Post for the death of its supreme editor. That's how bad the Washington Post is these days. And everybody in D.C. that I know was sending me little notes, including reporters at the Washington Post, say, you have no idea how bad it is here. The Hamasniks are trying to capture the press and turn the PR wins into attacks on Israel. And I hope Sherry Redstone cracks the whip on this and stamps it out. Because when you are forcing a reporter who dared to ask a challenging question to an interview subject, you're forcing him to go to a struggle session for the audacity of asking a question. You're doing something that it's not called journalism. You're doing propaganda. The Hamasniks have taken over CBS News. So for those of you who listen to CBS News, you need to understand that unless something changes right now, they've told their reporters, stop referring to Jerusalem as part of Israel. That's not just wrong, it's bad. AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry. Everybody's talking about it. Billions of dollars invested, so buckle up. The problem is AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, Databricks, Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/Erickson, ERICKSON. That's oracle.com/Erickson. Oracle.com/Erickson. Go check them out today. Hello, the Americans. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. Well, Kamala Harris wants you to know you can't price gouge during hurricanes. That would be bad.
Finally, as the president mentioned, to any company that or individual that might use this crisis to exploit people who are desperate for help through illegal fraud or price gouging, whether it be at the gas pump, the airport, or the hotel counter, know that we are monitoring these behaviors and the situation on the ground very closely, and anyone taking advantage of consumers will be held accountable.
You know, it's against the law in Florida. They enforced this in Florida. They didn't need her help doing that, and yet she felt compelled to do that. Here's Ron DeSantis on Kamala Harris trying to get him on the phone. Notice she's doing all these things for the president. It's trying to make her look presidential. All it's doing is tying her to the Biden administration. She's damned if she does, she's damned if she doesn't. And I think she kind of is getting the clue at this point. Here's DeSantis.
Hey, Governor, could you just help clear something else up that happened earlier this week? And we were actually debating it at this table, so I got to ask. There was some praise that came your way from President Biden and said that they had spoken, you had spoken. Then there was this brouhaha over Vice President Harris apparently reaching out to you and maybe not taking the call, and this whole thing, accusations that this had all become politicized. Can you just speak to what happened there?
I am working with the President of the United States. I'm working with the Director of FEMA. I'm marshaling all my state assets. We've been doing this now nonstop for over 2 weeks between Helene and this. And so if there's anything I can leverage to benefit my people, I'm going to do it. The fact of the matter is they put out a story saying I didn't even know she was trying to reach me, but she has no role in this process. And I've been dealing with these storms in Florida under both Trump and Biden. Neither of them ever politicized it. And in fact, all the storms I've dealt with under this administration, although I've worked well with the president, she has never called in Florida. She has never offered any support. So what she's doing is she's trying to inject herself into this because of her political campaign. So as the governor here who's leading this, I don't have time for those games. I don't care about her campaign. Obviously, I'm not a supporter of hers, but she has no role in this process. And so I'm working with the people I need to be working with. We're leveraging the resources I need to be leveraging. And for her to try to say that my focus should be on catering to her rather than worrying about my own people just shows she doesn't understand what it means to respond to these natural disasters.
Amen. Boy, it was stupid of her to do that. It'd be smart of you to go to ericforhillsdale.com today, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com, and sign up for those calls. I got my copy of Imprimus in the mail yesterday. Haven't had a chance to read it yet. I was a little bit perturbed. My mother got her copy before I got mine. I am going to read Imprimus when I go to the lake this weekend. I'm not going to be here on Monday, as an aside. It's my anniversary. But you should take Imprimus to the lake like I do, or to the beach or wherever. Read it cover to cover. It's not that long, but it's deeply insightful. You go to ericforhillsdale.com. You get it completely for free. And you can get Hillsdale's podcasts on their podcast network with your favorite app. You can get Larry Arndt's lectures on the Constitution or Victor Davis Hanson's on citizenship. They're all free. All you do is go to ericforhillsdale.com. In fact, if you go to ericforhillsdale.com today, you'll get a free pocket Constitution and Declaration of Independence. ericforhillsdale.com, ERICK. Go there today, and you can build a relationship with Hillsdale College. ericforhillsdale.com. Greetings, conversationalists. I'm delighted to have you. The phone number is 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. I played the clip earlier of James Carville. And James Carville, of course, has one of the most famous lines in politics. It's the economy stupid. That was the focus for Clinton. The economy stupid. Well, how's the economy doing? Here is Bloomberg News.
All right, let's take a look at CPI. Comes in a little bit hotter than anticipated, up 0.2%, same as last month. Forecast was for 0.1. The core comes in up 0.3. That is also a little bit hotter than forecast. 0.2 was the belief. 0.3 was what we saw in August. The year-over-year numbers, 2.4% for the headline, not as good as anticipated, and for the core, 3.3%, not as good as anticipated. So maybe this will catch a little bit of wind, given the fact that we had seen the big, strong jobs report last Friday. Now, speaking of jobs, we get a big jump in jobless claims, 258,000. Now, that's up from 225 the month before.
What? I thought when Marco Rubio said this was a scam, he was denounced as a liar. You mean jobless claims have spiked? People filing jobless claims, inflation is higher than what it should be. Okay. I gotta, you know what? Yeah. Let me do this. Take off these headphones here. Let me just talk to you without having to hear myself yelling back at me. Oh, boy. If Kamala Harris loses, and by the way, she can lose. And I know Democrats, the bravado, the beige, like, she can't lose. Everybody hates Trump. If Kamala Harris loses, I hope Democrats and the media, and I'm not actually hopeful that this will happen, but I hope they might sit down and do some reflection, which being a progressive means you never have to say you're sorry. You never have to reflect. You got no sense of history. I realize that. But why? Why did she lose? If she loses. And it's going to be because they got the message wrong. They broke the economy and they vilified people who said the economy wasn't working. They lectured people that actually the economy is good. You shut up and be grateful. People in the coast, we know, were less bothered by inflation than people in the heartland. That's the data, the very data that they use to show that the economy was great. The same data shows that actually in the heartland, it's not as good. Will they think, maybe we shouldn't have gone full bore down the transgender road and put boys and girls sports? Will they be reflective about that? I suspect what's going to happen, and Charlie, maybe we want to stick this away in the See I Told You So file. Here's what I think is going to happen. Given how I know Democrats and given how I know history, if Kamala Harris loses, it's going to be your fault. You don't care enough about democracy. You are racists. You are misogynists. Young black men have been consumed by rap culture and they hate black women. Hispanic men are racist. They hate black people and women. Of course, those whites. They're going to blame you. They're going to blame Trump supporters. They're going to hate America. America's broken. America's bad. And I would tell them, in the words of Louis Grisard, Delta's ready when you are. Hop a flight to Timbuktu and stay there. Good riddance. Will they be reflective at all that, maybe we should have taken some responsibility for the economy? Maybe we should have tried to fix it. Maybe we did spend too much and put too much in the economy. Will they do that? Well, they say maybe we did push too hard. We didn't like the frog in the pot of water. You know it's not real, but it's the illusion everybody uses that if you just leave the frog in the slowly warming pot of water, he'll stay there. But if you heat it up immediately, he jumps out. Maybe they move too fast on cultural change. People weren't ready for it. But when they do that, they'll blame those people for being bigots. Will they recognize at all that maybe it wasn't a good idea that they pushed the way they pushed? I doubt it. I think what they will do is they'll vilify people, and they won't have any ounce of self-reflection on why they lost. It'll be Joe Biden's fault. He should have gotten out sooner. He dragged them down. It'll be Kamala Harris. She came in from behind. They'll make excuses. The reality is this, though. There are a whole lot of people out there who are good, God-fearing American citizens who love their country and love their neighbor, but they understand that Washington, D.C. hates them. The people who write the New York Times hate them. The people who write the Atlantic hate them. And the people who cover the news for CBS News and MSNBC and even CNN hate them. You know, when I was at CNN, one of the anchors, who's still there, y'all don't know him, great guy. He told me his word of advice for me was never do, this is when the day part at CNN was still out of Atlanta. He said, never do those shows. Those are the guys who want to be as progressive as possible, hoping that it'll get them promoted to New York City. Now they're all in New York City. I have high regard for CNN, but I think bringing back Don Lemon so much and Brian Stelter, they're reversing some of the Chris Lick stuff, who was no saint and had deep problems, but he actually, I think, accurately diagnosed some of the problems at CNN, and now they're bringing those problems back. Will there be any self-reflection? Same way, though, with the Republicans. If Donald Trump loses, will you go straight? I know this is going to happen. If Donald Trump loses, it'll be they stole the election again. And the problem here for the Trump supporters, if Trump loses, is you've now got to look yourself in the face and everyone else and answer a simple question. If he as president and in charge of the FBI and Homeland Security and everything else couldn't get the election stolen from, stop them from stealing it, how did you think he was going to stop them from stealing it when they're in charge? Why did you renominate a man who couldn't get it stopped, who he couldn't stop the steal when he was in charge? Now he's not in charge. Of course he can't stop the steal. By the way, with him not being in charge now, with Joe Biden being in charge of the FBI and everything else, if Donald Trump wins, of course, they will move on from it. They'll never insist it wasn't stolen, but they will try to tell you, why are you relitigating 2020? Why are you relitigating 2020? We won. Be happy. If Trump loses, will there be any recognition that a man who a majority of Americans have consistently said they don't like, that maybe he wasn't the guy you should put up? That maybe it was not smart to nominate someone who, whether you say it was lawfare or not, and by the way, I do think it was lawfare, but where he indicted in half the country and paying all of his money to lawyers, maybe that wasn't smart when you had such a deep bench of other people who could have carried on MAGA. You didn't want them, you wanted him. If he loses, will there be any self-reflection on the part of Republicans? This is part of the problem here, is a healthy society can engage in self-reflection. There's a book out right now, and I was actually listening to a podcast by the guy. Hang on a second. my buddy, Jeff, where are your text messages? My buddy Jeff was texting me, and then I heard the podcast. Yeah, Hughes Norton. The book is called Rainmaker. Hughes Norton was a super agent. Hughes Norton was the guy who cultivated Tiger Woods. When Tiger Woods was 12 years old, Hughes Norton started visiting Tiger Woods' family, built a relationship with his dad, Earl, became his agent. I haven't read the book yet, Rainmaker. I was listening to a podcast this morning from Tom Coyne with the Golfers Journal, and he's interviewing this guy. I just started listening to it as I was driving into the office, and it's a remarkable book, but the thing that stands out about the book is that this guy, Hughes Norton, was like one of the most famous sports agents of all time, and he lost it all. Tiger Woods fired him. His company that he helped build, they fired him. And the book is deeply self-reflective. To grow, you have to have some level of self-reflection. And neither party at this point really wants to be self-reflective. The Democrats in particular. The Republicans more often than not have to be reflective because the media forces it upon them. But sometimes they get it wrong too. Remember the 2012 autopsy of the GOP defeat from Mitt Romney? The RNC did this autopsy, and basically it was all of the stuff that the elite of the Republican Party had wanted to do all along. Guess what? Turns out that all those things, if they just did those things they'd always wanted to do, we would win, which was nonsense. In fact, Trump's done exactly the opposite, and he's done better with Hispanics. He's done better with blacks. It's one of the things about conventional wisdom. It's conventional because everybody says it, but it's not always true, and sometimes it's not tested. Like, for example, open borders. The Democrats have for the longest time said that if we leave the border as porous as possible and allow as many Hispanic illegal aliens from Central and South America to come into the country, we will become an unstoppable party because that's what they want. And the Republican elite in Washington have seen this, and they're like, you know what? They're right. We got to advance amnesty. We got to find a legal pathway for citizenship. We got to make these people legal citizens, and we got to be the ones to do it so we can take credit for it, and they'll come to us. And Donald Trump came along and said, heck no. These people are illegal aliens. They're taking jobs from law-abiding American citizens. They need to be deported en masse. And guess what? Hispanic voters love that message. The Republican autopsy got it exactly wrong. They weren't self-reflective at all. They were CYA-ing it. The Democrats are doing the same thing with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris can win this election, but she's not winning it right now. And even the Democrats know it. She's not campaigning aggressively enough. She's on defense. Every time she opens her mouth, she says something stupid. She's too tied to the Biden administration. She can't separate herself from the Biden administration. It's an anchor. It is a millstone around her neck. But also, when Kamala Harris stakes out her own positions, she staked out so many far left progressive positions, and people remember them, and we've got the sound bites of her from 2020, and the Republicans are crushing her with this, whether it's fracking and energy. I mean, the Green New Deal, you know there are some Republicans right now who are telling Donald Trump, if you get elected, don't walk back all the Green New Deal. There's some stuff in there we like. No, kill it. Kill the whole thing. Get rid of the government subsidies. Both parties need to be self-reflective. Whichever party loses, there's going to be a civil war in that party. If Trump loses, the poison in the Republican Party, you're going to have people, I mean, hopefully, God forbid, physically killing each other, punching each other. But, I mean, the rhetorical, metaphorical violence of the Republican Party is going to be off the chains if Trump loses. Because, you know, this is the weird thing about this election. If Trump wins, everyone's going to be like, yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, of course he won. Look at the economy. Look at everything. If Trump loses, same thing. Outside of his supporters are going to be like, yeah, I mean, people hate the guy. If Kamala Harris loses, be like, yeah, I mean, look at the economy. Look at Joe Biden. Look at how she became. I mean, yeah, of course she's going to lose. If she wins, people are going to be like, yeah, of course she's going to win. People hate Trump. That's why the race is so tied. The win and the loss of both sides is so obvious right now. We're in a tied race. But I think in a tied race that benefits Trump, and I think that if the Democrats do lose, and again, she can win. It's a tied race. She can win. If the Democrats do lose, though, I don't think they're going to be as self-reflective as the GOP. And I also think if the Democrats lose, they're going to burn down America. And if the Republicans are smart, they will do in 2024 in the midterms exactly what the Democrats did to them. Threat to democracy, insurrection, and all of that. Payback. Because you know and I know if Trump wins, major American cities in blue areas are going to be set on fire by angry progressives who have internalized Trump's a threat to democracy. It's not going to stop him. It's not going to stop the GOP. It'll ruin some small businesses in big cities. The Democrats would be very, very wise to be very, very self-reflective. Now, I got to tell you about Americans for Prosperity. They're out on the ground, advancing, helping the conservative movement, helping pass common sense conservative reforms, and they do it by building an army of activists, and they would love to have you on their side. If you go to americansforprosperity.com/volunteer, you can sign up with AFP today. Sign up with Americans for Prosperity. You sign up with them, and you, my friends, can be the smartest person in your circle of friends. You'll be the most informed. They'll give you all the information about common sense conservative reform for taxes, for small businesses, for education, for school choice, for securing the border. They've got it all. They'll educate you. They've got chapters in almost every state. And then if you want to learn how to knock on doors and persuade voters, well, they can teach you. If you want to show up to your local government or your state government and persuade them on common sense conservatism, they'll teach you how to do it. They're hands-on with you. They're the nation's largest leading grassroots organization. They'd love to have you be a part of them. Go to americansforprosperity.org/volunteer today. americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. Sign up with AFP. Be a smarter, more effective conservative activist. Fight for the advancement of common sense conservative solutions in the United States with americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. I'm doing an event next Thursday night at the Governor's Gun Club in Kennesaw, Georgia. It's with a nonprofit called This Stuff Matters. If you listen to my live stream, you'll hear Tom Gray's segments. They're not explicitly faith-based, but gospel-oriented minute segments on radio stations around the country. And so this is a fundraiser. It helps pay for the effort to put these on air. They're really good, thoughtful one-minute segments. And so I'm doing a discussion. I'll sit on stage with Tom Gray from This Stuff Matters, do a Q&A about being neighborly in an isolated age. And if you would like to go, their website is thisstuffmatters.net. Thisstuffmatters.net. And if you go to that website, you'll see an events tab. Click it, and you can sign up. Now, I also sent out some emails. So I'm using something I bought. It's called a customer relations management system. It's called a CRM. And because I want to keep in touch with the radio listeners as I go around the country. And like, for example, in this, I was able to say to the system, find me all of my listeners who live within 50 miles of the Governor's Gun Club, and I'll send an email and let them know that I'm going to be there with a link. They can RSVP. By the way, dinner's included at the event. They've got great food at Governor's Gun Club if you've never been. But in any event, if you text the word Army to 33777, you can put yourself into that portal so I can keep in touch with you and send you stuff like that if I'm going to be in your area, or if there's an action item, like call your state legislator or your member of Congress about an action item. I'll be able to do that. And also, one of the things I want to do is, like, we've got a bunch of people in states around the country and want to be able to email them and say, hey, here's this radio station. They're thinking about putting us on. If you'd be kind enough to email them and say, I already listened to the live stream, it would be great. It would help us tremendously, and we'll be able to help you as well. Also, if you text Army to 33777 and you put in the system, this is one of the coolest things. If you text Army to 33777, I'll send you back this link. You click the link up at the top. Once your information is in, you'll see a link that says My Officials. And if you click it, it is your personal little Rolodex, your personal little contact list. It has every one of your elected officials' contact information. So it has both of your federal U.S. senators. It'll have your state or your U.S. congressperson. It'll have your governor, have your state senator, your state representative, your county commissioners, and your city council members. It'll have their phone numbers, their email addresses, their business addresses, their social media links. All of that is on the platform. It is my gift to you, my listeners, to keep you engaged in the process. All you do is text Army to 33777. You sign up and you get all that information. You can go to it at any time. Also, if you go there now, you'll be able to verify your voter registration. And if you're not registered to vote, you'll be able to get registered. All you have to do is text Army to 33777. I will keep you engaged in the process. And right now, that includes making sure you're registered to vote. And if there's time, getting you registered to vote. Text Army to 33777.